Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, May 6th, 2026, and today we'll have ourselves a little soil health party and talk about reviving abused soil, soil health on a budget, and incorporating amendments without tilling. So let's do it. All right, happy Wednesday, world. Look at us, halfway through the week already. We've got a decent sized set of deliveries ourselves headed out today. Loads of lettuce per usual that I harvested yesterday with a handful of strawberries. Literally like dyed my hands strawberry color. Headed to our friends up at Locals in Frankfurt, great restaurant and a little food hub. And they buy more local produce than anyone else I know of locally. So if you're ever on the Bourbon Trail, hit up our friends over there in Frankfurt. It's also run by former farmers, no less, which is super helpful as a farmer to communicate with them. I also did a little bit of cultivation yesterday in our fields. That's not something I have to do very often, but as our compost mulch layers get thinner, the weed pressure goes up, especially around the living pathways that I sometimes neglect. So I do have to remain somewhat vigilant there. I was planning to do some planting in the field today, but the weather was planning, I guess, on ruining those plans, it seems, as it has been raining all morning. I mean, I could still do it. Again, the nice thing about no tillage is that, I don't have to do any soil work, so it doesn't really matter if it's wet or not, but I don't personally love digging holes when the soil is wet. So I may call an audible there and switch my seeding day that was planned for tomorrow to today and my planting day to tomorrow. Plus, I'm still a little bit wary of the weather dipping, and getting us a little bit of a frost before May 12th. Season just has that, surprise vibe to it this year. I mean, so far so good, but a couple days with lows in the 40s are headed our way. That's like around 4 degrees Celsius. So those have me a little bit on alert. What are things looking like for you all in your neck of the woods? Let us know, or better yet, send us a 20-second farm video clip to Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Just upload it to Dropbox or Google or whatever and share it with him. Anyway, all right, so today what we're going to do is a little bit of a compilation episode on soil health stuff. So we will join old me to replace some old segments, and then we'll be back with all new stuff tomorrow, per usual. Gives me a little bit of a break on Wednesdays. I appreciate that. Okay, then, without further rambling from current me, here is some rambling from old me. Enjoy. Today's question comes from Patreon member Megan List, who writes, quote, "I am delighted by your shift to daily shows and appreciate that you make the show available on multiple platforms." Thanks, Megan. They continue, "Adulations completed. I have a field that is mostly dead. It suffered through decades of local farmers dumping chemicals into it. I'm planning on restoring a few hundred square feet to grow and sell peppers next summer, more space to be restored in the coming years. My question is this: how would you restore compact and mostly dead soil for use as a no-till garden? I am planning to break up the soil with a shovel until I get a broad fork and introduce compost and mulch. Interested in any other ideas, opinions," end quote. All right, great question, Megan. And I think it's safe to assume that by local farmers dumping chemicals into it, you mean by conventional farming and not by literally using it as a dump site. That the latter would require a whole other conversation about remediation and possibly a chat with the EPA, because yikes. Now, depending on how long ago this took place and what was spread on these fields, it could have an impact on what I'm about to say. If they were spraying any persistent herbicides for broadleaf weed control and hay production in the last 3 years, for an example, you may have to approach this a little differently. If they were just growing corn and using some Roundup and some 10-10-10 fertilizer or whatever, then you can get back up and running without worrying as much about residual effects from those herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers. I'm going to assume they were producing a commodity crop like corn and soybeans, and the soil organic matter is simply depleted. Either way, my approach would probably look like this. First, I would start with a soil test, probably through Kinsey Ag or Logan Labs or someone nearby who does Albrecht method soil testing, to get a good idea of what I'm working with. I like those tests most when starting a garden. Later on, I prefer the biological test, but I like those Albrecht method soil tests, more commonly referred to as base cation saturation ratio tests, or BCSR tests, to start, because there may be significant deficiencies in a depleted field that need to be addressed, and these help find nutritional imbalances. Anyway, again, more on soil testing another day. For now, my next step would be to go to consult with that laboratory to see what they recommend for amendment additions. Then I'm going to apply whatever they recommend and add some good compost as well, at least an inch thick to the area, After that, to break up that compaction, I would plow/till the suggested amendments plus the compost into the soil. For you, maybe just shoveling it in, flipping that soil a little bit if you could to just break it up. But if not, getting it deep down in there would probably do the trick pretty well. Are there ways of skipping that tilling/shoveling part? Yes, but like with a house, your foundation is everything, and it sounds like the foundation is currently in disrepair and needs a lot of fixing. I think this is one big thing I took from talking to landscapers over the years. Foundation is everything to long-term success. You really need to do that initial work so you're not dealing with issues forever. So for you, I might lay all that amendments down, the compost down, and then work it in with a shovel. Then, if time, I would cover crop over that over the winter and then start that garden area in earnest in June for your peppers. Or you could simply apply a mulch and have it be ready at that same time too. Either one is fine. I like the cover crops because it can give you some indication as to what to expect while also getting some good biology working in the soil. But the mulch will do some of the work as well while also suppressing the weed populations. This will all depend a bit on where you're located as well. If you want to plant peppers early, a mulch will make more sense than a cover crop because a cover crop really needs to grow until mid-May here in zone 6B, but it could be later as you get into, colder and colder climates. A compost mulch, dark as it will be, would be ready sooner to plant into than like a straw or hay mulch, obviously. Today's episode is brought to you by BCS America. If you're practicing no-till or low-till farming, you know that heavy equipment is often the enemy of your soil structure. That's where BCS two-wheeled tractors come in. Built for small farms, market gardens, and regenerative growers, BCS tractors give you the power to manage beds efficiently without unnecessary compaction. For the low and no-till grower, there are two attachments that change the game. The BCS Power Harrow stirs only the top inch or two of soil to incorporate soil amendments and create a perfect seed bed without soil inversion or pulling up weed seeds. And when it's time to terminate cover crops, that flail mower shreds organic matter into a beautiful, nutrient-rich mulch right on top of the bed. To find your local dealer and see the full lineup of attachments designed for the way you farm, head to bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by GrownBy. Grow smarter with GrownBy, the farmer-owned cooperative. GrownBy is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now GrownBy supports in-person sales too. Their new app, GrownBy Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. GrownBy is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. GrownBy helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show. So our first Patreon question of the day comes from Patreon member Adam Kinney, who writes, quote, found your YouTube channel this winter and have been binge watching. Really appreciate the content. I have been home gardening for 20 plus years, but using traditional tillage models. The last few years, I have mixed my soil with some bagged, quote unquote, garden soil in the area where I plant my seedlings. And this works, but doesn't help the surrounding soil. I'd love to start this spring with no-till, but buying enough compost for several inches deep, even with my small 30 by 60 garden, would be a large upfront cost. I'm considering buying enough compost to start my early season bed and starting a cover crop in the entire spring/summer bed, foregoing the summer crop, to start work on soil health. I will also start making compost. We have chickens and plenty of other green/brown material to hopefully make enough compost for late summer or early spring planting. With a small budget in mind, does this seem like the best way to get started? What cover crop would you recommend? I have some clay, so I was thinking tillage radish mixed in with something else would be a good start. Any help would be great. End quote. All right, thank you for the kind words and for this great question here, Adam. So it's kind of a soil health on a budget question or a going no-till on a budget question, and I love that. Basically, it sounds like you can get a small amount of compost and you're wondering how to maximize that for those sort of summer beds that you described. I think first off, that your instinct to use cover crops in conjunction with the compost is a really good one. Either work that compost into the soil, at least the top couple inches, or layer it directly into onto the surface if the soil is already plantable. Also consider at this time adding maybe some inoculated biochar if you can get your hands on it for a reasonable price to help retain nutrients and add a little microbial habitat in the process. This may also be a good time to send in a soil test and see what, if anything, the soil really is missing out on, and add some of that now at this stage before you kind of stop any sort of tillage. Then you can sow the cover crop into that sort of preparation and wait until the fall to plant it or plant it to another cover crop or whatever you want to do. Now, for the spring, I'm not generally going to recommend tillage radish. It can be a little hard to get rid of in the summer and does its best work over the winter, as it will grow and die on its own in many climates. Like, you plant it in the fall, you let those tillage radishes, those daikons, get pretty big, and then they just kind of die and rot over the winter, and that sort of opens up the soil for you. For you, if you want to plant cover crops into that ground in the fall, consider a succession of cover crops that are easier to terminate, such as field peas or beans, along with perhaps sunflowers and lacy phacelia. Grow those out, terminate them, do a solo round of buckwheat after that, and that should get you most of the way through the summer and really enrich that soil for perhaps a fall garden, for an August planting of fall crops. If you are not worried about planting until next spring, then sorghum Sudan grass is going to be a good hard worker for you all summer, and then you can switch to a winter cover crop or winter kill cover crop later in the fall. I talked about spring cover crops a few weeks ago, so have a listen to that. But one of the nice things about sorghum Sudan grass is it is a good weed suppressant, and it grows fast, and you can mow it really high up to maximize that soil building quality that it has, as the roots will basically just like die back when you mow it, and then that kind of produces that soil, creates soil organic matter. Cover crops to me are the ultimate in low budget soil improvement because, at least for the moment, seeds are relatively affordable. I also like things like kelp for micronutrients and biochar because although the upfront price tag can seem high, a little bit goes a really long way. As always, there are a million ways to build soil health, but few things do it better than just cover crops and a little compost. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and best of luck on the garden this year and in transitioning to some no or low tillage methods. I think taking your time to convert some of that soil, especially using cover crops, is the absolute right way to go. If you have the time is its own soil amendment, so definitely endorse that.
Today's episode is brought to you by Good Agriculture. If the season is picking up and the pile of receipts is starting to grow, you're not alone. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping so you can stay ahead of the mess before it piles up. They keep your books organized each month, help you understand what's coming in and what's going out, and show you where your farm stands so you can make better business decisions throughout the season. If you're behind, they'll help get everything caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. All right, back to the show. Okay, so as is tradition on our Thursdays, we're going to take 3 Patreon questions to help us get caught up for the spring. So our first Patreon question of the day comes to us from Nathan Leal Crisp, who writes, quote, "I have a question about lime, particular about calcitic lime with a one-time application. North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services recommends an application of lime. They recommend if you do a surface application, do not exceed 60 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Can this affect other ways of managing the planting area, such as choices in fertility management, plant options with direct or broadcast seeding, transplanting? We're trying to follow the soil health principles while still producing food this year, trying to use more no-till style methods because of the benefits that go along with it." Nathan adds some soil test details, then goes on, "I plan on broad forking, spreading pelletized calcitic lime, gypsum, some very slow organic amendments, raking and watering in well, then covering with a tarp for 7 to 14 days, hopefully creating a stale seed bed. Then remove tarp, sow," and they say parenthetically, "plants that will surround main crop, helping soil and next crop. Add other amendments and fertility, apply AEA products, apply appropriate mulch, irrigate tarp to germinate beneficial plants, uncover for 1 to 3 days. Transplant main crops like tomatoes, etc. if necessary, irrigate, then manage, harvest, store. Your show is really good. God bless," end quote. All right, awesome. And thanks, Nathan. I really love this question because it's it really gets to the heart of one of the biggest challenges of no-till production, and that is amending the soil without tilling. One of the biggest concerns that agronomists have told me they often have with no-till agriculture, and generally I'm talking about larger scale, sort of conventional no-till agriculture, but it could apply to really any scale, is a sort of stratification or layering of nutrients where the amendments that are applied just sort of form layers instead of getting incorporated into the soil. And indeed, the recommendation on the lime makes sense if you were to apply the normal recommendation for the pH that you have, whatever that would be. It could create serious nutritional issues right at the surface. This is one of the reasons that I generally suggest the one-time tillage in the very beginning of a garden's life to get the amendments you need worked in right from the start, and then use compost and cover crops to help manage nutrition from there on out. Anyway, I think your planned approach sounds good, although one tweak I would probably make is to add the amendments first and broad fork after that to help kind of work it into the soil. Broad fork closer than you normally do, like closer together, and that's just to make sure the amendments get plenty of opportunities to kind of drop down into the root zone. I don't have a lot of opinions on what amendments in particular you should use and you mentioned quite a few things there, or how much. I will leave all that to the agronomist, but I think using the broad fork and rake to work those amendments in is the right call. And always, listeners, make sure your agronomist is aware of whether or not you will be tilling to avoid that stratification issue when they are making their recommendations. For me, I like to add my rock amendments to the compost pile if I can when we use them. I like to then broad fork that compost in, or just surface apply and then go over them with a seeder. I've even used this earthway several times to drill amendments right into the soil, so they are not just sitting on the soil surface. Basically, you just put the amendments in the hopper of the seeder, use like the jumbo plate, and then you can just sort of push it through the soil, as long as the soil is in a condition that you can do that, like it's got good tilth. If your soil is biologically active enough and adequately moist, then the nutrients will be slightly more mobile in the soil from simple movements of soil organisms, roots, etc. Anyway, I know I didn't add a lot there, but I think by and large, your approach here is fine, especially for a garden that is already established, and it's hard to kind of go back and correct any nutrition once you've gone into a no-till system.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that little compilation episode in case you missed some of those segments. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. That is a huge, huge help. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of May, you get a shout on the show. So big shout outs today to Justin Woody. Shouts to you, Justin. Thanks for signing up. And as a reward, we will, get back to our story that we started on Monday. And as you will remember from that story, this one takes place in a trailer park where a couple of bored teenagers have decided they want to figure out what the mystery man does and who exactly he is. The theories range from a serial killer to retired spy and everything in between. I'm assuming basically everything is in between those two. But anyway, since his routine is so laid out, walks the dogs at the same time every day and leaves the house for a few hours every Friday, the teenagers know that they have a shot at getting inside of his house and poking around, figuring it out. So around 4:30 one Friday night, they creep their way over to his trailer to take a peek inside, and they can't see much of anything through the windows. That the curtains are fairly thick and fully closed. So they check all the windows until bingo, one lifts up, and that is for tomorrow or Friday, depending on how things go with our signups on the Mystery Maniac. Or is it? I don't know. That's a title, maybe. All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow. Bye. That is the life of a YouTuber right there.